Oregon fans, what is going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. If you're a real one, you are tuned in live right now, 1:15 a.m. It was a late, emphasis on the late kickoff for Oregon on Saturday against the Stanford Cardinal. I'm your host, Max Torres. That's my guy, Graham Metzker. And we are here to give you our instant reactions to Oregon's 45-27 win over Stanford at home in Autzen Stadium in Eugene. And man, there was a lot to get into in this one, Graham. So first of all, how are you doing? And just kind of some of your initial thoughts.
Max, I'm doing good. It's late, but there's only one place in the country that you get this late football, this Pac-12 after dark vibe. So you know what? I'm trying to keep my spirits up. It's 1:15 in the morning, but the Ducks got the win, so I'm doing good, Max.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it was a fun game to watch, no doubt about it. There's a lot we can get into here. I think just one of the biggest things for me is it was a blowout, and like Oregon looked really good in a lot of phases. Bo Nix looked pretty good. Troy Franklin looked like he continued to do his thing. Bucky Irving was just super hard to bring down yet again. But I think the thing that was kind of shocking, Graham, was the penalties. I think that was like one of the dominant storylines of this game, was just how sloppy Oregon looked at times, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, with a lot of false starts, some illegal men downfield, some holding, 14 total penalties for 135 yards. That was just, not to get into the negative right away, but I feel like everywhere you looked on Twitter, it was just like, wow, more penalties coming out, and it was kind of a shock.
Yeah, Max. And Lanning definitely highlighted that even ahead of the positives. So it's fair that we do as well. He called into the radio at halftime, and he voiced a similar emotion after the game. Just that Oregon is the only team that is really beating Oregon right now. They're beating themselves when they do this. And you can say, we're starting with the negatives, but Dan Lanning doesn't want this to be a good team. He wants this to be a great team. And great teams don't have 14 penalties in a game against them. They just don't.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of interesting, is that it felt in a way like we've seen, like it's a new Oregon team, but it's not totally a new Oregon team, because shooting yourself in the foot has definitely been a common refrain for Oregon in the past couple of years. I feel like whether it's penalties or turnovers or just finding some way to, let the other team back in the game, wasting timeouts when you don't need to. We can talk about that a little bit. I know a lot of people like to get after Mario Cristobal on that one. But yeah, it was 31-3 at halftime, Graham, and then it ended up being 45-27. So I think that the box score doesn't really tell the whole story in this one, with what the final score ended up being. I just want to put it out there, though. I might have had the closest prediction of our team over at Ducks Digest. I had 45-20, and then there was that touchdown with I think it was like a minute or so left, and then my perfect prediction went out the window.
You know what? It's a shame, Max, for sure. I'm sorry you ain't get the prediction. You definitely still got the closest out of our group. I was predicting that both teams would score a little bit more, but I was right in predicting that Oregon would let their foot off the brakes a little bit. I was even thinking that we would see Ty Thompson, and that would be when the regression kind of happens for Oregon, when they open that door just a little bit. Didn't do it too much today, but still have not seen the best of this Oregon team for sure. And Lanning will be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah, and that's what he was saying. It was kind of a typical Lanning presser that we've gotten to know so far here in the 2022 season. 5 weeks in now, I think we kind of know what we're going to get for the most part from Lanning. But let's start with the offense, because I think that was definitely the story of this game. And Oregon's offense has really carried them so far this season, but the defense has obviously had its moments too, of shining and having some good play. But let's start with Bo Nix, 16 for 29, 161 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. and he was Oregon's leading rusher. 6 carries for 141 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns with a long of 80 yards, averaging 23.5 yards per carry. Maybe not the best night passing the ball for Bo Nix, but nonetheless, any way you slice it, it was 4 touchdowns and another solid game for Bo.
Yeah, like you said, Max, it could have been a better passing game from him, but how are you going to complain when your quarterback scores 4 touchdowns and runs for 140 yards on the ground? Lanning, like you were saying, we kind of know the way that he talks now. He said he had a funny quote from the presser saying, "Yeah, Bo Nix better be our top rusher. If you have a 80-yard rushing touchdown, you should probably go over 100 rushing yards on the game." But overall, a really strong performance from Bo Nix. It's good to see a type of performance like this from Nix because it shows you that he is so multidimensional. He doesn't just need to get it done in the air or on the ground, but it's that mixture where Bo is the best for Oregon.
Yeah, and I think that this was one of the good things for me just to see from this game was we were talking about doing a 3 up 3 down story on Ducks Digest that I'm gonna write in the next 24 hours or whatever it is, just kind of peeling back the layers of this game. And I think that I would go stock up on Bo's rushing ability, Bo Nix in the run game, because it's been utilized, but a lot of it's really been close to the goal line. He's calling his own number. He did it again with one of his 2 rushing touchdowns where he had a dirty pump fake to get the defender in the air. I think it was Caillou Blue Kelly, I want to say, one of their best defensive backs, and then he ran it in for a touchdown. So Bo Nix is really starting to show that he can. We already knew he could make an impact in the run game as well, but I feel like it was a really solid overall game from Bo, and good to see him take care of the ball again.
Yeah, it was. We definitely knew Bo Nix was reliable for rushing in those short distance, close to goal, red zone type of scenarios. It was really promising to see him rush outside of the red zone today. That 80-yard run that ended up being a touchdown, it was a pass play at first that he didn't see anything he liked, stepped up in the pocket and kept on stepping. And that was obviously a great play. He had a wonderful play on his other rushing touchdown with the pump fake, kind of little side shrug, little Michael Jordan push off a little bit, if you will. Definitely stock up for Bo Nix's rushing game. It's the 3rd straight game in Autzen Stadium for Bo Nix where he scored at least 4 touchdowns. No turnovers again on the day. That's QB1.
Yeah, and another part that maybe flew under the radar for some people, but I kind of found myself thinking a couple times. I love seeing the deep shots, but I feel like his deep ball really wasn't that great tonight because he had 2 where they ended up being thrown into double coverage and they were kind of just sinking. Like you could definitely tell they were just losing steam on their way down. So I think that he's pretty lucky that 2 of those didn't get intercepted. And then he also had a deep ball to Chris Hudson where he just slightly overthrew him and missed him. So that I'm sure is a throw that he wanted back. So I don't want to beat up on Bo Nix at all. I'm just saying that maybe it makes sense to dial it back a little bit. And, you still got to make sure you're taking those calculated risks. But overall, a pretty solid showing.
It's a fair criticism, Max. It is, because in past weeks, that deep ball has just looked so good, especially to Troy Franklin. And there's never been a question when he's thrown it in the past. He wasn't throwing it into double coverage on those deep balls in the past few weeks where we've been seeing him do really well with it. So that's definitely something to work on. But again, to circle back to the main point, just shows you that Nix can do it in multiple ways.
Yeah, and I think also just to maybe we can kind of do this in 2 parts. We'll talk about the offense and then the defense, and then hopefully I'll be able to get another show with you guys where we kind of go more in depth. We just wanted to get something for folks to wake up to, and they want to hear about the game, so we're going to come through for them. But Troy Franklin continues to just be an absolute stud. Not so much there from a volume standpoint or a statistical standpoint this game, but that touchdown was phenomenal. Like that was just a thing of beauty. Kind of a weird play. Bo scrambled out to his right. Troy had kind of gotten to the top of his route in the back of the end zone, and he worked his way back against Caillou Blue Kelly and just had this awesome toe tap touchdown. there. I think it was his third on the year. And I tweeted out like, man, it's insane that he was on this team last year. Like, I feel like unless you were an Oregon fan, if you had never watched this team, you would have been like, oh, this guy, he's a young guy. He probably didn't do very much last year. Like, maybe I'm not wording that right, but it's just night and day. Troy Franklin is absolutely the lead wideout for this team, and I really do feel like he's just getting started. And if they can get some other guys getting some more volume, like Coda had a touchdown as well, I think that it's only going to help raise his ceiling, I think.
Yeah, it's really, really convincing. And first of all, your first point is totally correct. How did Troy Franklin not play for this team last year? It just goes back to all of the headaches that the Mario Cristobal era had with that offensive side of the ball. But anyways, we're here to talk about the good stuff today. Troy Franklin is the best pass catcher on this team. He's the most reliable. He was targeted the most tonight. He had the most receptions tonight. He's the leader in those categories on the season. And it really is a very talented pass catching group. And I feel like that's why he's having such a good season. Bo likes to look to Terrence Ferguson in the red zone. He's got Chase Cota for those, type of short yard passes. But Troy Franklin has just been so good at every level, just getting those short passes to move the sticks, the deep balls that Bo Nix has been connecting on earlier, and the toe tap swag. I mean, come on. Troy Franklin, just phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, that was great. And I think another cool highlight was that touchdown pass to Chase Cota. I think it was at the end of the first quarter. Stanford was like just trying to get off the field, but you had Oregon's like, no, let's go. Let's get one more in. And then he got the ball, hit that hole, and was just gone. Super cool. I know he was asked about kind of what it was like to get his first touchdown. He was like saying he looked up to those seats in the crowd where he grew up going to games. So really a cool full circle moment for Chase. And I'm kind of surprised it took 5 games for him to get his first touchdown. Not that that's any slight to him. I just felt like the volume would be there more. And Terrence Ferguson, like you were saying, has emerged as a top red zone target, and then Troy Franklin as well. So it seems like it's good that we're seeing more of these guys just get involved here. Sean Dollars had three catches as well. But we've been talking a lot about the pass game, and we talked about Bo on the ground. Let's talk a little bit about the rushing attack before we talk about the defense. Noah Whittington led the team with 11 carries for 66 yards, and Bucky Irving was there at 10 carries for 97 yards, averaging 9.7 yards a carry. Just unreal numbers. And I mean, this guy, he continues to impress every week. And I feel like he's really making a case for himself as the best running back in the Pac-12. He didn't do as much from a receiving standpoint this game as he did against Washington State, coming up with some really big catches, most notably that 4th and 2 last week. But this dude's just so fun to watch. I don't know how else you describe it. He bounces off every guy, it feels like, that comes into contact with him. And he has a knack of turning nothing into something.
Yeah, Max, you said it. First of all, I think today he clearly proved that he's the best running back in the Oregon team. I'm ready to start having that conversation in the next few weeks that he's among the best in the Pac-12.
Sure.
I'm ready for that soon. I don't know if we're there just yet, but I'm definitely ready for that soon. But today was just another day. I felt like all of us up in the Oregon press box were just constantly fawning over Bucky Irving, just the way that he runs. Only 10 carries on the game, but I felt like every single time he touched the ball, he was so hard to bring down. He took at least 2 or 3 defenders to take him down. The way he switches the field, the way that he is so strong and solid with his runs, and like I was saying, so hard to bring down. He's incredible to watch. And he ended the game with 97 rushing yards. He had 90 of those in the first half. That is crazy. They definitely started looking other ways. Bo had that big 80-yard rushing touchdown, so it's easy to kind of look past Irving. But to me, he's the best runner on this team.
Yeah, he's really just cemented himself as a key component of this Oregon offense. Just a couple more, kind of superlatives on the Oregon offense, talking about the rushing attack. Even with how penalized Oregon's offensive line was and how kind of unorganized it looks at times, these penalties, these false starts, these holds, they're kind of drive killers or drive stallers. This team still finished with 351 rushing yards, which is insane, averaging 9.5 yards a carry. And then one of my other points, actually, Eric's asking about here. It was interesting. We didn't see Byron Cardwell again. He was dressed and he went through pregame warmups, but we didn't see him play in this one. True freshman Jordan James had 3 carries for 9 yards and was able to score another touchdown. He's that short yardage back for the team, kind of that Cyrus Habibi-Likio type of role. So Dan Lanning said earlier this week that they're gonna continue to evaluate how he is in practice and if he's able to go through everything without any hitches. But I don't want to speculate too much on injuries, but Cardwell didn't play again, so it's definitely something worth talking about a little bit, because even when the game was totally blown wide open, Sean Dollars is in there getting carries.
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting at the very least, Max, because at the beginning of this year, I was convinced that it was Cardwell's backfield to lose. I thought he would be the top running back from day one, and he just wouldn't let go. He is very, very talented, just like all the runners on this team. But Oregon has so many options at receiving. It has so many options at running back that, when a guy like Cardwell is injured and maybe could go, but you decide not to let him go, a guy like Seven McGee and the wideouts, gets ejected, you've got so much talent on this team that in a game like this, maybe not in against a tougher opponent, but in a game like this, you can rely on your depth.
Yeah, and that's what I think is kind of the key word for Oregon with this offense, is they just have a lot of different guys contributing, and if someone needs to come out, there's not a whole lot of drop off. We definitely have more we can get to there, but we want to get quickly to some defensive reactions and takeaways. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break for those listening on podcast. So give us a second, and we'll be right back with more Oregon football talk about the Stanford win after this. All right, welcome back to the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, talking with Graham Metzker, who was in Eugene covering the game for us over on Ducks Digest, running our live update story. Let's switch gears now and talk about the defense, Graham, because I think that, like I was saying a little bit earlier, the final box score, 27 points, that Stanford offense was awful, like really, really bad, like borderline painful to watch at times. I don't know why they're running the mesh offense. There were like single-digit number of times it works. Tanner McGee's not a mobile quarterback. It was gross, but Oregon was able to capitalize, making some good plays on defense. Ended up finishing the day with 3 sacks, and Brandon Dorless played a heck of a game. So did Noah Sewell, and the Ducks were without DJ Johnson to start. But I don't think that the Ducks were, too hurt or, threatened really in this one by Stanford's wide receiver core, which is honestly pretty good. Maybe they're just not in the system that fits them.
Yeah, first of all, laying it down, Max, a little bit harder than you might usually.
I know, I'm fired up. Maybe it's because I'm running on fumes, but that was awful, dude. Like, what the heck?
No, I'm with it. And coming into this game, I was expecting that Stanford would have a solid passing attack. Tanner McGee is a good quarterback, not a mobile quarterback, but a good quarterback. And they've got capable receivers outside, talking about Michael Smith. That's a very solid receiver for Stanford. And he was clamped up all night by Christian. Oh, excuse me. Michael Wilson. I'm sorry.
I got you.
Michael Wilson, 2 catches for 14 yards. That's because of Christian Gonzalez. He was seriously locked down tonight.
Yeah, I think someone was commenting about him earlier, actually. Here we go. From Will. Gonzo's a beast, best tackler on the team, he says with his comment. But yeah, I think that was really the matchup that we were looking for. Gonzo against, wide receiver 1, whether it was Michael Wilson or Elijah Higgins, who did end up getting a touchdown. But I thought that was a really good, I thought as imposing as Stanford's wide receivers are, just like by pure talent alone, I thought that Oregon's secondary and their corners did step up and play a pretty solid game. Higgins led the Cardinal with 6 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown, and then Casey Filkins had 3 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown, but he had that 140-yard catch and run that kind of skews the stats. I will say Justin Flo wasn't available, so that was another talking point for this defense, which was interesting because he wasn't really discussed too much in the press conferences leading up to the game about just his availability. But and he played last week against Washington State, so I thought that was kind of a little bit of a shock. And then the Ducks chose to kind of go with some of their typical guys rotating in at linebacker. Sewell was obviously out there, Bossa, Keith Brown, Jackson LeDuc, guys like that.
Yeah, Max. And here's one thing I noticed from the first half when DJ Johnson was not in. He came back for the second half after that targeting suspension. But in the first half, Noah Sewell, who is usually man in the middle linebacker, was lining up at edge rusher. And instead, the Ducks were looking to Jeffrey Bossa and Keith Brown in the middle of the field. And Sewell was having plenty of success going against those Stanford offensive linemen. He was getting through. And then DJ Johnson comes back in the second half. Sewell slots back into his linebacker position, and DJ Johnson ends the game with the sack. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier with the offense. That depth is serious, but someone like Noah Sewell that can so effortlessly switch from defensive end to middle linebacker, I don't know many players in the nation that do that like him.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a wrinkle that we saw from this game was Noah being utilized more as a pass rusher, and I say do it more. Especially if guys are you don't want guys to be able to just key in on DJ Johnson as your main pass rusher. But just on the topic of not even necessarily sacks, but just generating some pressure and getting some really good knockback, I got to give a shout out to Casey Rogers. I think this was Casey Rogers' best game since he got to Oregon, the Nebraska transfer. He was really good in run support as well. Definitely a bit of not a bad performance, but 127 yards for Stanford running the ball. That definitely was not a stat I expected, especially because they had a couple of tackles that were questionable, and I think they lost one of their guards that got carted off earlier on in that game. So the offensive line wasn't a strength at any by any means, and they were still able to get some pretty good yards, running the ball, which was a little bit surprising. But yeah, I think that I really just wanted to give some props to Casey Rogers. He's definitely going to be one of my best defensive performers, and it's good that they're able to get contributions and steady play from some of these newer guys, Sam Taimani, Keon Ware-Hudson as well, with Popo being out for the year. So I thought that was one of my biggest takeaways is that Casey Rogers looks like he's really starting to fill in and find his groove.
Yeah, Casey Rogers really did look good. He was breaking through the middle of that Stanford offensive line quite a lot, and right next to him, breaking in just as much, if not even more, was the man we always talk about on the defensive line, Brandon Dorlus. He had a fantastic game. 5 total tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. I mean, he was disrupting everything. It felt like every time Stanford's offense picked up a little bit of momentum, big bad Brandon Dorlus came through and wrecked up their plays. So, we do it. Casey Rogers stepped up today in this game. It was a great performance from him at the defensive tackle, and Dorlus doing what he always does, being excellent at it.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Dorlus is a guy. He's been a guy since he got to Oregon, and he's just continuing to improve year after year. Another bit, and he was also saying that he, after the game, was like, the whole deal with DJ missing the first half because of the targeting call against Washington State. He's like, I felt like I had to put it on me. I had to take over the defense and kind of put him on my back, and he definitely did just that. So I thought that was, great to see. Seeing you want to have that senior leadership and those guys that you can lean on. You don't want it to just be DJ Johnson because, he could get hurt or something else could happen. And he may not be available for a play or two or, extended period of time. But I think another big takeaway, Graham, for this defense, how about the third down defense? I thought that was a great improvement for this Oregon team. And part of the reason that this game got so ugly so fast is because they were able to get off the field. I think at times, I'll be honest, I think it was bad Stanford offense, but getting off the field when you can is crucial. it's, one of those ways. I don't think it's necessarily the same deal as shooting yourself in the foot, but just being able to capitalize on those opportunities when you can get off the field, get a stop, and just get the ball back to your offense. I thought that was really good. So I think that's still an area that they want to continue improving, but just by being able to get off the field, like it keeps the game manageable, allows you to keep continuing to build momentum. So that was definitely a win for the Oregon defense.
Definitely. And whether it's, poor offensive play calling or a strong defensive play, getting off the field on third down is getting off the field on third down. The defense stepped up when they needed to step up. I didn't think that any part of Oregon's game tonight was flawless, but did what they needed to do. We talked about solid tacklers. Someone commented that Christian Gonzalez is one of the most solid tacklers on the team. For my money, definitely Christian Gonzalez is up there, but I got Bennett Williams as well. Just another really strong veteran presence on this Oregon defense. He ended up forcing that fumble that Noah Sewell picked up. That was the only turnover that Oregon forced all game. And this Oregon secondary is something that we've worried about in weeks. We've worried about in the past. We'll worry about it in future weeks. But it felt good this game because I'm never really going to be questioning Christian Gonzalez or Bennett Williams. Whatever else happens in the secondary, I can trust those two guys.
Yeah, and I think another interesting note about the secondary, how about JJ Greenfield? That guy got a ton of snaps tonight. And I think that they're warranted because he was really making a name for himself and making a good presence on special teams a season ago. And then, he rejoins the program after spending some time at, I think it was College of San Mateo or at the JUCO level. And he's carving out a role. So I think that they're still rotating guys quite a bit, maybe more than I would like to see at safety. But Triquez Bridges seems like he's continuing to get a little bit better, and maybe he has a little bit of a firmer grasp or grip on that cornerback 2 role for Oregon now. But I thought, those were kind of some of the bigger takeaways that I had for the defense. Jeff Bossa looks, like he continues to look comfortable out there, kind of man in the middle on that defense.
Yeah, Bossa is another player that I definitely always trust on the Oregon defense. It seems like he never played safety. He was playing safety last year. He plays linebacker now. It seems like he's been there forever, and he's that perfect build, in my opinion, for that box-to-box type of safety linebacker hybrid. Bossa was great tonight, especially like we talked about how Sewell had to step up into that defensive end. You're relying a lot more on Bossa and Keith Brown as well in the middle of the park. But I thought he was great. And one thing I would add too is his energy is always great. He's got great celebrations, even on a small tackle. He brings that hype to the Oregon defense that you need sometimes to get off the field.
Yeah, no, the energy has definitely been there for this Oregon team on defense. And I think that's kind of going to be one of the main things I'm going to be following the rest of the year is how quickly, if they do even catch up, the defense catches up to the offense and just that level of production. I think getting at least one takeaway per game is definitely a confidence booster. And yeah, that fumble that Bennett forced was great. Just when, the helmet knocked the ball out right away, and then Noah was able to grab that. Let's see. Any kind of, just as we start to wind down here, any more big picture takeaways that you wanted to hit on here, whether it's either side of the ball, before we get out of here?
Yeah, Max, it's not very major, but I think it is worth noting because I want to say it's the third straight game that we've seen Ty Thompson come in at the end of the game. Obviously it does right now. Bo is obviously QB1. Ty Thompson is not coming in to take that spot from him at any time. But I really haven't been impressed with what Ty Thompson has done lately. He's been put in some tough positions, and I'm concerned a little bit about the confidence for him because Lanning keeps on throwing him in these games that are already over with the second team. And when he doesn't do good, I just wonder how that dynamic builds up. I don't want to speculate or anything like that. Just something worth noting because Ty Thompson is still getting snaps out here.
Yeah, and that was kind of something that I was going to talk about. He finished just 1 for 5 for 3 yards and a pick, with the ball getting batted at the line. And I'm not trying to, rip the guy apart. I feel like this is one of the biggest differences between, college and NFL. Like if I were an NFL reporter, you could just go in and it's like these guys are making millions of dollars. It's, whatever. But, these are college students. So I feel like the dynamic's a little bit different. But yeah, I feel like it's, we've seen him enough times. It's maybe, I'm not saying it's time to start asking questions, but like, when this game was out of hand, I was like, I want to see Butters. I want to see what he what he has to do. It's not like you're in the position where you need points, and at the same time though, Ty clearly needs these reps, but it just kind of feels like the offense is a little out of groove. Like it's like, a little forced or a little uncomfortable when Ty's in there at quarterback. So it's interesting because we were having this conversation earlier in the week, I think, just about how Bo's been playing and how he has another year of eligibility. And would Oregon fans want another year of Bo Nix just with how well the team's playing, how fun the offense is to watch, how effectively they're operating? And then you also have the deal with, Dante Moore, 5-star quarterback in 23, is already committed. Is he going to really be in the position where he can compete and maybe even ultimately win the starting job as a true freshman once he gets here? And obviously, you're going to lose probably one quarterback. That's just how things work in the era of the transfer portal. So it's a very interesting discussion point. But yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing. Just how confident are you, or where is Ty Thompson now relative to where you thought he was going to be, and with how much playing time he's been able to get?
Yeah, Max. And it's not something that I even want to discuss, really. I don't want to think about next season. Maybe Bo leaves. What happens with the quarterbacks? Maybe Ty leaves. What's the deal with Dante? We're having, the offense is playing so good for Oregon right now. It's hard to look forward to the next season. But every time you try to trot Ty Thompson out there, the questions are just going to come, I don't want Bo Nix to play all the games when Oregon's ahead, but every time Ty Thompson comes in, you start to open that door a little bit. Today it didn't matter too much, but what if it does in a future week? It's like I said, it's not a question that I want to be asking, but as long as we see him, we're going to keep wondering.
Yeah. So, and I mean, he has these opportunities to, I'm not sure how loud that was. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Late night burp control slipped up a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, when he comes out, until he, shows some more positive play, scores or, what have you, I think that those questions are definitely going to be asked. So I think that it's definitely a fair question to ask. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had. I feel like we hit on a lot of good stuff here. Really quick 30 minutes. But just any final points?
Yeah, Max, I would say a win is a win. It was a comfortable win for sure. No sweats, no nervous sweats, no crazy comebacks in the Stanford game this year. It was a good game. It wasn't a great game. And I want Oregon to be careful these next few weeks, Next week in Arizona, that's going to be another fairly easy match, knock on wood. Compared to the other Pac-12 opponents. I only say easy because after the Arizona game, you've got a bye, and then you've got UCLA coming to town, and they look pretty good right now. So I just want this Oregon team to stay locked in.
Yeah, so I think that given how the Washington State game kind of unfolded, we saw some poor tackling appear again. I think that this was kind of like you were saying, like a good, not great game for Oregon, but it was one that they needed, right? When we were writing stories this week, it's, Stanford's coming. They always have a pretty talented roster. They have really good wide receivers, one of the most experienced wide receiver corps. Tanner McKee's a good quarterback if he's in a good offensive scheme and if he can be kept upright. And it's a Pac-12 after dark game. It's an 8:00 game. So there were reasons to be kind of hesitant about this game, but, it didn't really waver, and Stanford has a lot of things they have to figure out. But this is an important game for Oregon to come away with a win for, because they have to hit the road next week for another Pac-12 after dark game, depending on what time the sun sets out there in Arizona. But you got a mobile quarterback and Jaden DeLora and some really interesting weapons that Jed Fish has brought in. Tetairoa McMillan, the former Oregon wide receiver commit, California Gatorade Player of the Year.
Yeah, he had a crazy
Jacob
one-handed
Cowing.
catch tonight. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, and then Arizona, not a huge win to write home about, 43-20 over Colorado, but I just feel like if you lost this game to Stanford and then had to go face Arizona, it'd be a very different dialogue. So, Oregon is winning the games that they're supposed to win, which is all you can ask for. And we're seeing some signs of growth, but also seeing some areas where they still have quite a bit of work to do.
Definitely. Like we said, good, not great. A needed win, especially where Oregon's at. They've got some space to move up in the rankings this week. You got to win every week, whether it's pretty or not. You got to win every week if you want to go where Oregon's trying to go.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for us on this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. That's Graham Metzker. You can follow him on Twitter at Graham Metzker, and you can find his written work on Ducks Digest. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter at mtorresports. If you guys are watching on YouTube, do me a big favor, smash that like and subscribe button and share the Ducks Dish podcast. That is the easiest and most effective way you can support the show. Leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling about this Oregon win and all that good stuff. And we will catch you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. We out.
Peace.